Imagine a famous leader, someone who knows their time is almost up, and they're writing one last urgent letter to their community. What would they say? What would be so important? Well, that's exactly what we're looking at in the book of 2 Peter. And today, we're going to break down this incredibly powerful final message.
Right off the bat, Peter sets up a totally different kind of crisis. See, his first letter was all about handling persecution coming from outside the community. But this one tackles something way more insidious, a threat that's already gotten inside the gates, a danger coming from within.
And believe me, this isn't some gentle reminder. The tone is dead serious, and the stakes could not be higher. There's a reason it's often called one of the most urgent and sobering letters in the New Testament. It's basically a spiritual battle plan to stop an internal collapse.
To really feel that urgency, you have to know when this was written. This is the Apostle Peter we're talking about, an eyewitness to the life of Jesus, writing this around AD 64. That's right before his own martyrdom. Knowing he had so little time left just makes every single word feel that much more critical. This is his farewell address, his last shot to guide the people he loves.
So what was this internal threat? What was so bad that it demanded this kind of final, urgent warning? Well, the core problem was the rise of false teachers. These were people who were quietly gaining influence and, piece by piece, threatening to tear the community apart from the inside out.
Now, what's so fascinating is how Peter describes these guys. They weren't walking around with horns and a pitchfork. They weren't obvious villains at all. They operated in secret, slipping in these destructive ideas that probably sounded pretty good on the surface. They were driven by greed and arrogance, looking to exploit people, all while their corrupt actions completely denied the authority of Christ.
And Peter does not mince words. He uses this really shocking and honestly graphic image to get his point across about the spiritual reality of the situation. To him, for someone to know the truth and then willingly go back to a corrupt way of life, well, it's as repulsive and unnatural as this. It just shows you how seriously he took this deception.
But Peter doesn't just point out the problem and leave it there. Nope. In the face of this internal decay, he offers a really clear two-part strategy. And it's not just for survival, it's for genuine spiritual growth and strength. So the first part of his solution is all about building a powerful defense from the ground up. He's basically arguing that instead of just playing defense and reacting to lies, you should focus on building a character so strong and so grounded in truth that deception just can't find a foothold.
And he lays out this brilliant, practical framework. He presents it like a ladder, where each step, each quality, is a direct counterattack to the false teacher's corruption. Think about it. Where they're greedy, you add goodness. Where they're deceptive, you add knowledge. Where they live for pleasure, you add self-control. Each one builds on the last, creating this stable, mature character that's pretty much immune to their influence.
Okay, so Peter gives us this list of virtues to work on. It's a great list. But what's the ultimate goal here? Why is this personal development project so absolutely crucial in the fight against all this false teaching?
Well, here's the point. Actively growing these qualities keeps you from becoming spiritually stagnant, and that is the exact condition the false teachers prey on. This kind of growth leads to a fruitful, effective life, which is the total opposite of their corrupt and destructive path.
All right, let's move on to the second part of Peter's solution, which fits perfectly with the first. While you're building up your inner character, you also need an external, objective standard of truth to hold on to. When you're hearing a bunch of conflicting messages, you've got to trust the primary source. For Peter, that bedrock truth is Scripture. His argument for its authority is super simple and direct. He and the other apostles were eyewitnesses. They saw it happen. They weren't just making up clever stories or myths. He claims the message isn't some human invention. It has a divine source. This quote right here really drives the point home. What Peter's arguing is that the truth you find in these prophecies, these messages believed to be from God, it doesn't depend on some human author's personal opinion. Its authority, he says, comes directly from God, and that makes it a reliable anchor in a sea of confusing, deceptive ideas. So this all leads us to Peter's final major theme. He takes on the biggest criticism the false teachers and scoffers were using to undermine the faith. And in doing so, he gives the ultimate motivation for living a steadfast life. It's all about the long game. Here it is. This was the core of their attack. Scoffers were mocking the believers, saying, "Hey, you've been waiting for Christ to return, but look around. Everything is just continuing as it always has. So, where is he?" They were using the apparent delay as proof that the whole promise was a sham.
Peter's response is just a brilliant reframing of the whole issue. He completely challenges their human-centric idea of time. He's saying, look, you're judging this on a human timetable, but you have to try and understand it from a divine perspective, where time itself just operates differently.
And this lays out the two perspectives perfectly. The scoffers see a delay and they conclude, the promise failed. Peter sees the exact same delay and concludes, God is being patient, not slow. And what's the purpose of this time? He argues it's to give more people an opportunity to turn back to him.
So to wrap this all up, Peter's final message really leaves us with 4 huge takeaways. First, personal spiritual growth isn't optional, it's your primary defense. Second, you have to actively guard the truth you've received. Third, you've got to rely on Scripture as your ultimate authority. And finally, live every single day with the perspective that the future God has promised is absolutely certain. And that leaves us with a question that is just as relevant today as it was nearly 2,000 years ago. In a world filled with more competing ideas, more false claims, and more distractions than ever before, Peter's ancient strategy of building inner character and holding to a bedrock truth really forces us to ask ourselves, how do we stand firm?
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us.